Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something just absolutely fascinating, the very mechanics of human perception. Think of it as a journey right into the architecture of our own minds. We're going to be looking really closely at how we construct the world around us, or, at least the reality we think we're experiencing.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever looked up at the sky on a lazy afternoon and just clearly seen a face staring right back at you from the clouds? It's this universally shared, entirely subjective experience, right? We've all been there, pointing out a dragon, maybe a ship, or a smiling face just drifting by in the sky above us.
But here's what's actually happening up there. Our minds are actively imposing patterns onto completely random stimuli. There is literally no face up there. Your brain is, quite frankly, just making up information on the spot. It takes pure chaotic randomness and aggressively forces a recognizable meaning onto it. Mostly because, the alternative is just admitting it's staring at a damp blob of gas.
Let's look at Section 1, the cognitive shortcut, how we make sense of the world.
We often brush this off as just a fun quirk of our imagination, but actually, it's a deeply ingrained biological feature called subjective perception. Simply put, subjective perception is just the mind's tendency to impose patterns or meaning onto random stimuli so we can make sense of the world. Think of it like your brain's ultimate cognitive shortcut. Because think about it, you are constantly bombarded with a staggering amount of visual data every single second of your life. So your brain uses subjective perception to rapidly organize all that chaos into something familiar and manageable. It helps you navigate your day without getting entirely overwhelmed. This brings us to Section 2, subjective versus objective, the reality check.
Now, let's strip away the illusion for a second and look at the cold, hard mechanics of what is actually present in the physical world. This is objective reality, meaning the actual intrinsic qualities of an object completely free from our personal perception or any applied patterns. And the undeniable objective reality here, clouds consist of absolutely nothing more than condensed water vapor. They do not possess any inherent facial features whatsoever, none at all.
And this brilliantly illustrates the heavy friction right at the core of the human experience. On one side, we've got subjective perception, where we forcefully impose a pattern and boom, we see a face. But on the other side, we have objective reality, where there are absolutely no inherent features, just a floating mass of moisture. That face is entirely a product of our perception, while the actual intrinsic quality of the cloud remains completely unchanged. We are perpetually caught in this crazy tug-of-war between what is actually there and what our biological wiring insists is there.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The real-world impact, zooming out.
Because, honestly, this cognitive shortcut extends far, far beyond just staring up at the sky. Where else in our lives are we utilizing these mental shortcuts? The exact same mechanism is playing out in the high stakes of our daily lives. Take interpersonal relationships, for example. How often do we impose a pattern onto someone's tone of voice, or maybe a super brief text message, and we just assume there's anger or a slight there when objectively there is none? We do the exact same thing in decision-making and problem-solving too. We look at a few random data points in our careers, our finances, or personal projects, and our brains forcefully connect those dots to form a narrative, a face in the data that simply isn't inherently there. Imposing these false patterns can drastically and negatively impact the choices we make every single day.
So, the crucial point is coming up here in Section 4, questioning your assumptions. How do we actually bridge that gap between our subjective, sometimes faulty, shortcuts and actual objective reality? We desperately need a solution to this perception problem. And that solution, straight from the research, is to question our assumptions and seek out multiple perspectives. It's such a powerful directive. We literally have to actively stop blindly trusting our first glance. Since our brains are biologically wired to jump to conclusions and hunt for patterns, we have to consciously, deliberately hit the pause button. By inviting in other perspectives, we're essentially bringing in external, objective data to cross-check and verify our own subjective illusions.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. What faces in the clouds are clouding your judgment right now? Think about a conflict you're currently facing, or maybe a major stressful decision you're wrestling with today. Are you truly looking at objective reality? Or are you just staring at a convenient pattern your brain invented just to make sense of the noise? Take a step back, question those assumptions, and look again. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always question what you see.